How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
Hello, America. It is Eric Erickson here. I sure hope you are having a great day. It is almost the weekend, and it's an open line Friday, 877-973-7425 nationwide if you want to call in. We got to begin with what's happening in the Caribbean, and I've spent some time on this, and I need to explain why. The President of the United States is telling the United States Congress he has no intention of seeking congressional permission to carry out his strategies in the Caribbean. And you need to understand why he is taking this position. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 1, the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States. When you then get into Section 2, Clause 1, the president shall be the commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militias of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States. Clause 2, Section 2, he has the power by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties, provided two-thirds of the senators concur, nominate and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, nominate ambassadors, public ministers, consuls, judges, other officers of the United States. Clause 3, the president shall have power to fill all vacancies that may expire during the recess of the Senate. Section 3, have time to time give a report to Congress on the state of the union. Recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. He shall receive ambassadors and other public ministers. He shall care that the laws be faithfully executed, shall commission all the officers of the United States. It's a very short article of the Constitution. However, what it is largely interpreted to mean is that the President of the United States shall have plenary power to arrange the foreign affairs of the United States as he sees fit. And only with treaties does he need the advice of the Senate, not even the House, just the Senate, because the Senate represents the states, and under the American Constitution, treaties of the United States are binding on all of the states and the federal government as if they're part of the Constitution. And so you have to have two-thirds of the states to go along with the treaty in order to bind those states. And the states are represented by senators. Otherwise, the president, it is widely believed and held by the Supreme Court and operated by under the United States Constitution that the president of the United States is virtually a king when it comes to foreign affairs. And this is why I told you some time ago that presidents in their second terms tend to look to foreign affairs. Why? Because they're lame ducked in the United States. They can't get as much stuff done. And so every president who is in his second term looks towards foreign affairs as a way to cement a legacy without having to deal with the people in Congress. And this president has for some time embraced two ideas, and you got to understand these two ideas. By the way, I should have started with this side note, housekeeping note. At the bottom of this hour, Brooke Rollins, the Secretary of Agriculture, is going to join me to talk about the government shutdown. So Brooke Rollins, Secretary of Agriculture, bottom of this hour. I will ask her about the screwworms as well. So two things President Trump is taking real seriously. One is the Monroe Doctrine, mentioned this week. The Monroe Doctrine was established and promulgated by President Monroe with his Secretary of State, John Quincy Adams, who would become President of the United States, who was the son of John Adams, the second President of the United States. And it essentially told Europe, get out of the Western Hemisphere. And if you come into the Western Hemisphere, monarchies, we're not going to allow them. The British actually supported the Monroe Doctrine. The British had a global empire. The Spanish and the French were trying to establish monarchies in Central and South America that they could then use to go after the portions of the British Empire. So the British, after the War of 1812, remarkably, were very supportive of the Monroe Doctrine and actually were the only European power that didn't push back against it. The Russians, interestingly enough, hated the Monroe Doctrine. The Russian Tsar believed that it was an upstart, rebellious little people of the Western Hemisphere thinking they could throw weight around, and the Russian Tsar was very committed to the Germans, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Prussians, the French, you name it, throwing their weight back at the Americans. It did him no good. The second idea that the president has is modeled after the British as they were an empire in decline. The British as an empire in decline went from being the globally dominant superpower that everyone had to pay attention to towards pitting itself against various rivals. One week they were allies with France, the next with the Austro-Hungarians, the next with the Russians, and then back to France and back and forth, and kept everybody on edge as to where the British were going to stand because they were still the strongest power, but they never really wanted to lock themselves into a dominant permanent alliance. There had been some thinking within the Trump administration, and the thinking in particular of people around J.D. Vance, that the United States is an empire in decline. Of course, they're not allowed to say that. They've got to do rah-rah, America's the greatest ever. But privately, they have thought that the United States of America is in decline. We're on the verge of bankruptcy. We've got to pivot from being the dominant global superpower to playing it like the British did, where we would keep everyone else discombobulated with our rivalries. It seems, however, that Donald Trump has come to decide the United States actually remains the dominant superpower, and that China is actually a nation in decline, and that we should leverage American power. And in fact, because he's in his second term, and because the president has decided that he wants to focus more on international affairs, he's kind of rejected this idea that we're a nation in decline. And in fact, there is a lot of data out there that the Chinese are doing worse than us. 2 data points for you. President Trump and President Xi Jinping of China will meet next Thursday on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, the White House announced, as the leaders of the world's 2 largest economies look to de-escalate a simmering trade war. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt announced the timing of the meeting during a press briefing Thursday. I think we're going to come out very well and everyone's going to be happy. Item number 2. The bottom line, this from Robin Brooks, is China's exporters are hurting. Just-in-time manufacturing means warehouse capacity is limited, so it's important to keep goods moving. The only way to do that in the face of the tariff shock, which makes it much harder to sell in the U.S., is to discount and thereby generate new demand abroad. And domestically, that's a negative shock to the profitability of China's exporters. The recent decision to escalate the tariff standoff using rare earth minerals may very well be a reflection of the pain China's exporters are feeling. And let's just add in this third one from the New York Times. The Trump administration is preparing to file a trade investigation into China's failures to uphold the terms of a trade deal signed in President Trump's first term, according to a person familiar with the investigation. A move that could result in more tariffs and increased tensions between the United States and China. The move follows weeks of strained relations between the world's largest economies and could be an effort by the United States to try to amass leverage ahead of a meeting next week between Trump and Xi. The investigation, which could be announced as soon as Friday, would be filed by the U.S. Trade Representative, allowing the United States to investigate the trade practices of foreign countries. The inquiry could pave the way for more tariffs on Chinese imports. Now, all of this comes with what the Wall Street Journal is calling the Monroe Doctrine. This is from the Wall Street Journal today. Once a relic of the 19th century U.S. diplomacy, the Monroe Doctrine is back. 2 centuries after President Monroe warned foreign powers to stay out of the Americas, his namesake doctrine is surfacing on influencer TikToks and podcasts, in corporate pitch decks and White House hallways as President Trump recasts it as a blueprint for U.S. dominance in the region. Since returning to the Oval Office in January, vowing to take back the Panama Canal and make Canada the 51st state, Trump has applied extraordinary pressure on countries across the region to fall in line with his security agenda. In what some Trump officials have dubbed the Monroe Doctrine, a centuries-old warning has become a battle plan. The president has deployed sweeping counterterrorism authorities against Latin American cartels and criminal gangs, launched airstrikes against alleged drug boats that have killed dozens, approved covert CIA operations, and mounted the largest military buildup the region has seen in decades. Where Monroe sought to keep European powers out of the region, Trump has turned the doctrine inward, treating the hemisphere as an extension of the U.S. homeland, where Washington will act unilaterally to root out perceived enemies. Loyalty is rewarded. Defiance carries a price. The White House has moved quickly to punish dissenting leaders, yanking visas and imposing sanctions from Bogota to Brasilia. It has combined a show of force in the Caribbean with a campaign to squeeze Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, hoping to drive him from power. We're restoring a needed focus on defeating threats in the Western Hemisphere, Trump told hundreds of generals and admirals last month. The message has quickly reshaped Washington's national security priorities. After decades of what defense officials call South blindness, U.S. Southern Command finds itself on the front line with renewed resources and a vastly expanded mission. Half of the countries visited by Secretary of State Marco Rubio have been in the region. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, touting the America First policy, has overseen the deployment of F-35 fighter jets, Navy warships, and Marine Expeditionary Forces in the Caribbean. Y'all, here's the thing. I've been telling you this for a while now. This isn't to pat myself on the back. It's just to note that I've been telling you for months that we were headed this way, because I talked to enough people within the administration and around the administration to know that this president and those around him in foreign policy, including Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, have long believed that, going back to George W. Bush's fixation with the Middle East, that we squandered an opportunity to solidify South and Central America for us. And what happened is the Chinese, the Russians, the Cubans, and others have been played in our backyard and turning the Central and South American landscape against us, and that ultimately led to the outbreak of gang violence, that ultimately led to a massive wave of humanity trying to cross the southern border and Joe Biden letting them in. And Donald Trump believes if you clean up our backyard, you're going to clean up inside the house as a result. If you fix the backyard, you secure us and our border. And what's been happening is China has been throwing its weight around in Central and South America, which is our backyard, not China's backyard. And what appears to happen is this. The president, his jumping off point was actually the idea from Vance and others that we needed to wind down our global superpower status by doing like the British did with the deterioration of the British Empire, and play all sides, keep everyone off their game, and that would prolong our dominance. And what Trump has actually done is realize China is on decline. We can push China a little further towards decline, and in the process, we can rebuild the American dominance, not of the Western Hemisphere, but of the world. But in doing so, we can push China in our own backyard, and that actually helps us. To the president, I would say hallelujah, amen. I love this. I am concerned that Pete Hegseth is maybe not targeting all the right people with these ships we're blowing up, and frankly, it could lead to Donald Trump's impeachment if the Democrats get back the House and start asking some hard questions. And he should be very careful. I think Hegseth is becoming a liability. At the same time, we got to deal with Haiti, and the president has shown no appetite to deal with Haiti. The Chinese and the Cubans are trying to deal with Haiti. We do not want the Chinese and the Cubans to be able to deal with Haiti. We need to be the ones dealing with Haiti, because Haiti is very close to American soil. And also, the Cuban economy is collapsing, and we have an opportunity to push a little harder there as well. And the president could solidify himself and the future of the Republican Party with Hispanic voters if he fixes the issues in the Caribbean. He's got a real opportunity to completely realign American politics in ways that are positive, not just long-term for him, but for the GOP. And a lot of this, I've got to note, goes back to Marco Rubio. Who is Marco Rubio? He's the son of refugees from communist Cuba. He's a man who believes the Cuban people want to be free, and he hates communists, and he sees the communist influence of China and Cuba disrupting the Caribbean. And Marco Rubio is probably one of the few secretaries of state in the nation really punching above his weight right now, realigning Trump foreign policy, not to give up on America being the leader of the free world, but to expand the territory of which the United States leads. And that's a great foreign policy.
Have something to say?
You know what? I got to reroute my sound here because I've been gone and my laptop's been traveling. That was very unprofessional, wasn't it? Now, how about this? Y'all, I have been waiting to tell you about Cove Pure. I'm so excited. So, I moved my radio show and podcast out of my house to a studio, and I'm in a big corporate building, and you don't really trust the water out of the pipes. Cove Pure is the fix. They've got Clearwave technology. It removes 99.9% of contaminants, lead, PFAs, pharmaceuticals, you name it. I've got one in my office, and I finally have stopped buying bottles of water thanks to Cove Pure. There's no need to call a plumber or drill any holes. I was able to do it. You just plug it in on your countertop. You set the temperature you want on the touchscreen. It tastes like water. That is, it doesn't have a taste. It's fantastic. Take back control of your family's health and drink water the way it's meant to be. Go to covepure.com/Eric right now. Get $200 off while supplies last. That's covepure.com/ERICK. covepure.com/Eric. Get $200 off. covepure.com/Eric. Welcome back. It is Eric Erickson here. Let me go. Let's see. I don't have time. Y'all are going to have to be patient with me. Brooke Rollins is coming up at the bottom of the hour. She is the Secretary of Agriculture, longtime friend of mine, used to be in charge of the Texas Public Policy Foundation in the first Trump administration. She was a senior advisor to the president, then went out with, started a think tank in D.C., back in the White House now as Secretary of Agriculture. She is phenomenal, and I wanted to chat with her after doing this story yesterday about the Democrats with the government shutdown, SNAP benefits, and WIC. They run out November 1st, and a number of states, including California, are already signaling that they actually are going to cut benefits, and they believe it's going to hurt Republicans when actually it's going to hurt Americans. The Democrats are really fine with turning off the benefits because they think it'll hurt Republicans as opposed to hurting the nation. I am looking forward to talking to Secretary Rollins when we come back. And it's wild. She has such an expansive portfolio at the USDA. We'll probably get into some of that as well, including the screwworm stuff, which actually she has an agriculture background and actually knows a lot about. So we'll get to that. But first, I got to tell you about Hillsdale College. They would love to offer you one of their classes for free. You go to ericforhillsdale.com, ERICK, ericforhillsdale.com, and you can take one of their classes for free. Take the capitalism one out of the gate. In fact, if you go to ericforhillsdale.com today, the very first class they promote is their capitalism class. It's a great introduction in how capitalism actually fosters a level of integrity in the system if you allow capitalism to work without the technocratic strings. It's a very compelling class, and it consists of 7 30-minute video lectures by a professor at Hillsdale College. They're captivating, they're engaging, you're not going to get bored with it, and you're going to learn something. They've got a great one on Aristotle and ethics, and I can't speak highly enough of them. I love the C.S. Lewis one, which you should also take. And their videos, you do at your own pace. You get a certificate of completion when you're done, and you don't pay a penny. It's free. All you have to do is go to ericforhillsdale.com today, ERICK, ericforhillsdale.com. Sign up with Hillsdale College today. Start improving your mind with education, not indoctrination, and you can thank me later. You're going to enjoy it. The capitalism one is fantastic. ericforhillsdale.com. Sign up today. We'll be back with the Secretary of Agriculture. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome across the United States of America, from Alaska to Florida, from Connecticut to California. It's the Eric Erickson Show. It's an open line Friday, 877-973-7425. So I gotta build this introduction here, and I have great pain and regret to have my next guest on today. I want you to know I love my next guest. One of my favorite people ever in politics. Brooke Rollins, the Secretary of Agriculture, took a small think tank in Texas called the Texas Public Policy Foundation and turned it into just an organization that continues well after she's been gone to punch well above its weight. It's actually the sign of a great leader to take an organization, turn it into something phenomenal, and then when you leave, have it just continue to grow and develop. She worked for the president of the first White House as director of public policy, and now she's the Secretary of Agriculture. And I'm going to click the button here so she can hear me say this on the phone. Brooke, I should not have you on my show today, and I regret having you on my show today because you people play my LSU tomorrow, and I know it's going to happen, and it's going to be ugly, and you're going to enjoy tomorrow, and I'm not.
Oh, Eric Erickson, it's so good to be with you, and you will appreciate that, as you know, the Rollins are very, very big Aggies. I now have a son who's a yell leader, so who will be down on the field at Death Valley. But this, a lot of people talk about the A&M Texas A&M and University of Texas rivalry, but that A&M LSU rivalry is real. And it is legitimate. So anything could happen tomorrow night, but we are having a pretty good season. Remarkably, we're not used to this, Eric. We don't know what this feels like, so we'll see.
I know it, and I just maybe LSU will fire Brian Kelly after tomorrow, but I know you guys have been playing so good. But also, and I realize you're not calling to talk football, but I got to tell people that when I first met you, I was doing an event for you guys at Texas Public Policy Foundation, I think in Midland, and you couldn't stay because there was an Aggie game, and I don't know how you're surviving being in Washington, not being able to go to games every weekend.
Well, you might be surprised. We make it a little bit of a priority to get to most of the games, and now everyone in the White House, everyone in the cabinet. In fact, last weekend or the weekend before, I had a bet with Marco Rubio and Pam Bondi when we played Florida, because they're both Florida grads, and Marco's son actually plays for Florida. So you may or may not see both Pam Bondi, our Attorney General, and Marco Rubio, our Secretary of State, wearing Aggie maroon at the next cabinet meeting. Eric Erickson
would actually be fantastic.
This is how seriously we take this.
Oh gosh, I got to text Marco and needle him when that happens. Okay, now let's get to business. We've got a government shutdown, and as Secretary of Agriculture, and for folks who didn't know, Brooke did go to Texas A&M, has a background in agriculture, a degree related to agriculture, is the perfect fit for this job, and yet you've got this massive portfolio that includes, for example, SNAP benefits and things that are about to expire.
That's right. We've got our number one constituent, I have said since the moment the president called me about taking this job, is realigning the U.S. Department of Agriculture around its original intent when Abraham Lincoln launched it in the 1860s is when the USDA came online. And that is our farmers and ranchers and the real rural America, that frontier spirit, the fabric, really, of our entire country, what makes America, America. But even though that's our number one constituent, we do run, and the largest budget item at the USDA is the food stamp program. So we can have a whole conversation another time, and hopefully we will, about what we're doing to make sure that healthier, better, locally produced food is moved out through all of our nutrition programs at USDA, the MAHA piece of all of this. But today we're talking about the Schumer shakedown, the shutdown that's happening in Washington, and how 42 million Americans, our most vulnerable, are about to be completely taken off of that benefit program. So it's a problem and challenge, and it's just remarkable what these Democrats are doing to basically pull the rug out from those that they pretend and portend to represent and to fight for every day. It's just absurd.
So I saw, and maybe Gavin Newsom has changed his mind on this, but I thought it was interesting yesterday. I talked about it on my show that Glenn Youngkin came out with a statement and said, due to the shutdown, SNAP benefits are going to go away. The state of Virginia is going to use money to supplement until the government reopens. And California is like, nope, this is on the Republicans. We want you all to feel the pain. And it seems like the Democrats, they're not really focused on the pain poorer Americans are going to suffer after the first. They're just trying to use it to beat up Republicans.
Three things on that, Eric, that I think are so telling. Number one, Chuck Schumer saying, this is every day that goes by is a better day for us. Well, that's great for all the D.C. Democrat cartel, but that's not great for all of our American workers and those who are most vulnerable in our communities. Number two, some senior staffer said, it's going to keep, we're going to keep shutting down until planes fall out of the sky. I mean, are you kidding me? That is such a profoundly disgusting statement, even if meant in jest or metaphorical. To even think that or say that just tells you exactly who they are. And then number three, just in the last few days, another staffer, maybe a congresswoman, who said that we're getting great leverage. We have great leverage right now with using our poorest people to basically renegotiate and get more money into LGBTQI training in the Balkans or whatever crazy list they have. That's actually something on their list, by the way. Yes. So I just believe so strongly in what we're doing, how we're doing it. We just want to keep the government open. There's been 13 votes so far. The Democrats have been obstructing. They're the ones who are compromising everyday livelihoods for all Americans, and they have to stop. We got to get the government open.
So now a lot of your staff, I take it, is furloughed, and yet you guys are having to deal with the immediate fallout of the government shutdown being this loss of benefits. How do you balance essential staff and not on these sorts of programs?
The USDA, we have been working so closely with Russ Vogt, who runs the OMB, which these are all a bunch of silly acronyms that most Americans will never know and should not know. But that's our budget office over at the White House, and their team has been working around the clock with our team. And you're right, we have furloughed tens and tens and tens of thousands of workers. The USDA is one of the largest agencies in Washington and across the country and really across the world. But we have had the most amazing group of people, and I just want to shout them out. It's been 22-hour days as we've tried to keep the WIC program open, which is Women, Infant, and Children, tried to keep the SNAP program running, opening up the Farm Service Agency offices. We have 2,100 of those. Our farmers couldn't cash their checks because under this crazy archaic system, they've got to do it in person at their local FSA office. We're going to change that for the long term, but that's what's in law right now in the short term. So we have all been, putting in basically, again, 24-hour, 7-day-a-week days to get what we can out to help make this as painless as possible. But that painless is coming to an end on November 1st. There's literally nothing else that we are going to be able to do to keep these programs running. They will shut down, as you see them already doing in Virginia and some of the other states.
Well, here on my flagship station, WSB, I hope John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock are paying attention to the rest of the country as well. Those of you up in Connecticut listening, your senators as well. So much for wanting to help the poor. Now, let me ask you this question. When you get past November 1st, assuming they don't reopen the government, once the government does reopen, what happens? Are there retroactive things that happen to make people whole, or does it start anew? How does it work?
So all of the people, none of our team, including me, no one's getting paid right now. So everyone across the federal government, with just a few unusual instances like the money the president found to pay our soldiers and a few other things, some of the frontliners. But those who've been going without pay now for more than a month, and most of them are paycheck to paycheck. You're working for the government. You don't have, massive nest eggs saved. You're usually just trying to make your mortgage, get food on the table. And out of the last 4 years of Joe Biden, where the cost of everything went up 20 to 30 to 40%, that's become even more difficult. But the good news is everyone will be made whole once the government reopens. And I think that's important, especially for all of our great workers that are working every day without pay right now.
Now, I want to switch gears real quick in a couple of minutes I have left with you. Being the Secretary of Agriculture, I know you're paying attention to this issue, but I'm on in Dodge City, Kansas, where you've got, I think 70% of the beef in the country is processed. And then I'm on in Tulsa and Oklahoma City, where you have massive ranchers. And I keep hearing about the screwworm. And I know this is a project that you've had to get involved with, and that y'all are working now that they're working their way up through Central America. There have been one or two instances in Mexico, maybe here. Can you talk about what the USDA is doing to fight those?
Yeah, and it's funny that the first time I briefed President Trump on it, as you can imagine, he said, "Wait, what is happening?"
That was my reaction.
Yes, it's a flesh. He said, "Oh, Brooke, that's disgusting. It's a flesh-eating parasite. It sounds like a worm because it's named a worm, but it's actually a fly that lays its eggs in open wounds in livestock, warm-blooded animals. And we had it in America in the 1950s, 1960s. It completely devastated our cattle industry then. It took 30 years to rebuild, and finally got rebuilt, got rid of the screwworm across the country, down through Mexico and into Central America. And we don't have time to get into how we did it, but it's actually a pretty cool solution that some of the scientists came up with back then. But the eye was taken off the ball. And as the mass illegal immigration moved up through South America, Central America, through Mexico, a lot of livestock came with them. It had not been eradicated down in South America. And so here we are. The Biden team should have been doing a lot more about that in the last 4 years, but they didn't. We inherited this, and now we've got it. We had, just 70 miles from the Texas border. We found one about a month ago, closer, more about 500 or 600 miles from the Texas border, but that is way too close. We are way too close to where it is, but we are deploying at every effort of the federal government, the state government, down by the border in Texas, our local governments, Arizona, New Mexico. We're doing a $1 billion new facility in South Texas to create these flies that then get rid of the bad guys. So we're doing a lot, and I feel confident in our containment efforts. But if it does hit our border, if it does, I'm not going to say when, but if it does, we hope it doesn't, we're ready for that as well. So we, first time in history, we have unprecedented efforts on screwworm, and I'm really proud of the president. He's from New York City. He's not really done much in the animal disease effort, but he's all in making sure we're protecting our farmers and ranchers and our food supply.
Well, look, first of all, I appreciate your team reaching out to me because, I'm such a huge fan of yours, and I'm glad to have you on the show. And I know you dive into this job, and suddenly you're dealing with both something called a screwworm and that has nothing to do with the Democrats, surprisingly, and a Democratic shutdown. So you got your hands full, and I appreciate it very much that you're taking time.
Oh, well, this, Eric. You are such a great, so good at what you do, and so many people listen to you, but you being a Georgia boy and how important Georgia is to the future of America and all of your listeners, we've got a battle on our hands. This is the soul of America that we're fighting for, and I think God gave us a little bit of a potential plan when we won this election last November, but we've got to take every advantage of it, every moment. Everyone's got to do their part to ensure we're saving the American dream for the next 250, 500 years. So thank you for your part in that, too.
Amen.
It's really great to be on with you.
Enjoy the football game tomorrow that I just already know the outcome of, and I'm not happy, but I know you will have a great weekend.
Well, we love Louisiana. Can't wait to be there, and so grateful to you, Eric. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, a massive, dare I use the word obnoxious, Aggies fan. I just think the world of her. I really do. She's fantastic and was such a great pick for the Secretary of Agriculture job, just given her background. And if you guys don't know about the screwworm, in fact, I actually just saw updated information that they have found one within 70 miles of the American border within the last year. And for those of you Democrats who say that this was unfair to blame the Biden administration, no. They crossed the Darien Gap a couple of years ago during the Biden administration. And in 2024, they started finding them in southern Mexico. And the Biden administration, which actually coordinates the Central American response, never coordinated the response. They're now within 70 miles of the U.S. border. This was a huge failure of the American government, just not under this president, which is probably why you're not hearing about it. But thankfully, the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, takes it very seriously, that and dealing with the SNAP benefits as well, making have. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when Brooke Rollins had to brief the president on what a screwworm was. Sir, no, it's not a nickname for Bill Clinton. No, it's oh boy, serious problem though. And she's got the mental heft to be able to carry out the job. Thanks to Secretary Rollins for stopping by. I had a couple of, more than a couple of emails from people saying, no, we want to know about how do you get rid of the screwworms? It's actually really cool science. So the screwworm is a larvae of a fly. It's like a maggot, and it buries into flesh, and it really does look like a drill bit almost, and it's very painful and causes these massive open wounds. You usually have to kill the animals. But the female fly that produces the screwworm larvae only breeds once. So what you do is you breed a bunch of flies and you irradiate them, and it sterilizes the males. So then you carpet bomb Central and South America, and you overwhelm the wild male population with the irradiated male population grown in labs, and they then have sex with the fly, and the fly only does it one time before dying. And so because you've copulated with the sterilized male fly, you have no larvae to produce, and then you die. I know. It's kind of the reverse of like they do it one time and eat the guy. Nope, it's the other way around. The female fly dies, and so you overwhelm the population, the local population, with the irradiated males. And they've been doing this since the 60s, and it's been to great effect. However, the Darien Gap, which is down there in Panama, that's kind of the line of defense. It's where everybody bombs the flies to keep them from spreading. And there were problems during the Biden administration, and instead of stepping up the process, the Biden administration never did. And it was the technocrats and the bureaucrats, but the Biden administration gets the blame. They overwhelmed the process, or did not overwhelm the process. And so now they've been able to start populating again and have spread it north into Mexico. There's been one case 70 miles south of us. And so now the Secretary of Agriculture, they're building $1 billion facility to expedite the breeding and sterilization of these flies to get them down into Mexico and they literally drop crates out of airplanes and release the flies. Now, I got to tell you about Swiss America, because in addition to all that other stuff happening, you've also got this secret war on cash that has been cropping up around the country thanks to the government trying to control your spending. Swiss America has been warning people about the secret war on cash. They would love to give you their free report. It's completely free. They are one of the nation's trusted leaders in precious metals. They have been for 40 years. They want to help you with your retirement, your finances. All you have to do to get this free report, takes less than 15 minutes to read, is call or text my name, Eric, to 800-289-2646. You call Swiss America, tell them Eric Erickson sent you, or you just text Eric. You don't even have to talk to a person. You just text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 800-289-2646. You get their report. It is completely free. If you text Eric to 800-289-2646, they'll send you a link back. You click the link, you get the report, print it out, takes less than 15 minutes to read. You can also go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric, SwissAmerica.com/ERICK, or call or text 800-289-2646. Message and data rates may apply.